Okay, so here we are starting in the second video. We've done all the main functions here. We've got the computer's choice, the user's choice, we've printed the hands, and we're about to look at this function print winner. We've worked out whether the computer's won or the player's won. We've written both these functions. So we've really just got to look at this print winner function here now. So let's go back to that. So here we are, we've got our player wins. So if we call this function, it will return true the player has won. If we call this function computer wins, then this will return a true the computer wins. So really what I want to do is write the function now to print the winner. So def print winner. What does this function need? It needs the computer's hand and the player's hand. Remember up here in our main function, we've called them player's hand, so I've just got to be careful of that little slight difference there. So I should call it player's hand within my function. So what's the print winner going to do? It's obviously going to work out who wins. So if the player wins, so I call the function player wins, and notice here we've passed in the variables, or we're going to in a minute from main, but when they get passed in they're called computer hand and player hand. So within the print winner function they are called computer hand and player hand. So when I call the player wins function, that's the name I've got to use because I'm within the print winner function. So if player wins, if that's true, I've not got to say this, a lot of people are tempted to say this, if player wins is true. Well, player wins is the Boolean value itself, and it is true or false. So there's no point saying if true is true. You can just use the Boolean value itself. So if player wins, well, we need to say print you won because you're obviously the player. Else, well, I tell you what, let's just do this for a minute. We're doing if. It's not player wins now, computer wins. Obviously we're now going to think about the computer speaking, so it prints I win, because it's obviously the computer. If neither has won, we've obviously got to print it's a draw. We need to think about what's going to happen here. If the player wins, it prints you win. It then goes on to test this next function if the computer wins. And even no matter what it does with either of those two, at the end it would just print it's a draw. So this print it's a draw is going to be printed no matter what. So we need to think about the construct of this a little bit better. So if the player wins, print you win, and that's all we want to do. So we could return out of the function at this point. There's nothing to stop me just doing a return here, and that's it. It'll get out of the function and it'll only come down to the next point if the player didn't win. Or I can do elif. So now if the player wins, it'll do that, and if that's not true, it will do the elif statement, and it will do the next test, which will test if the computer wins, and for there it will print I win. And if that's not true, we can do a final clause else, which is our kind of catch-all clause, which says if it wasn't any of those, print. And at the end here, well, we can do a return, but we're not returning anything, so we don't actually need that statement because it will return anyway. So just the fact that the indentation has ended, it's finished that function there. So let's see if that works now. Let's take our commented lines back out. I'm not going to use those lines because those are my test lines. So print player's hand, print computer's hand, and now what I need to do is call this function print winner. Notice up here it's called player's hand, the variable, so just got to be careful there. Oh. Okay, so let's see if that works now. So enter your choice, rock, paper or scissors. I'm going to enter choice 1. So I chose paper, which is a computer thing. It chose paper. You chose rock. I chose 1, which was rock. And it says I win, so obviously paper wraps rock. Now just to kind of test it, because I'm getting a bit bored having to keep running this program all the time, what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to wrap this in a loop and just run it a number of times. So for x in range 0, 10, and obviously because they're all now indented in, I just need to indent them all in. So it'll just run that at least 10 times for me in main. Just give me a chance to do a few tests. So I'll go for 1 again. So I chose paper, you chose rock, paper rock, so computer wins, yeah. Go for choice 2 this time, so I'm choosing paper. I chose scissors, you chose paper. Oh, scissor cuts paper, so it wins. Go for 3 this time. They chose scissors, I chose scissors. Oh, it's a draw, so that draw kind of one works as well. Let's go for 2. Oh, I went for 3 again. I chose paper, you chose scissors, so scissors cuts paper, so you win. So we've seen all 3 outputs there. We've seen I win, you win, and it's a draw. So it looks like our code is functioning as we expect, which is good. By the way, I was in the loop there. I just hit Control C to get out of it. I didn't want to bother going around all 10 times. So there's our code now. We've got all our main functions written. Obviously we would need to put some comments with those, which you'll see in the finished code. We've tested them all, not to death, but we've given them all quite a good test, and it all seems to be working. And we've been playing around here in main, writing our functions to test them. Obviously what we need to do now is think about how our main function works here to control the calls to all of these individual functions. Just to reiterate, you may have not noticed it in there because we did kind of zip over it quite quickly, but we had our player wins and our computer wins functions, and those 2 functions, player wins and computer wins, were called from the print winner function. Okay, so if you look back to the code design, that's what we said we were going to do. From the print winner function, we were going to use 2 other functions to work out who had actually won. Okay, so the next bit is to look at what goes on in our main function up here. Okay, so to glue it all together, what we've said, if you look at the presentation, is we obviously need to use the while loop. And basically the while loop works by doing a test, and if the test is true, it executes a loop. If the test is false, it finishes that loop and it goes on to whatever the next bit of code is. I've indicated that by the end. And our program was really easy to code because we were going to use a variable called lives. It was part of our specification, starting with 5 lives. And basically, while the lives are not 0, so as long as there are still lives, i.e. lives is not 0, we go down and we run our code here. It goes round the loop, it comes back up to the top, and it retests the lives condition again at the top. So as long as lives doesn't get to 0, it will keep going around this loop. If lives does get to 0, then the code doesn't execute and it goes on to the end or whatever the next statement is within our program. So notice, because we're testing this variable here, lives, we expect it to change within our loop. Clearly, if it didn't change, whatever condition this was would always be the same. And you can see here that we're reducing lives by 1 every time we go around here if the computer has won. So looking at gluing our next bit together, really we could We could put all this in a separate function, but we might as well put all this in main now. So we've got to set our lives up to be 5 initially. We can test our condition, providing it's non-zero, go through here, and only if the computer wins do we reduce our lives by 1. So let's have a look at the code to do that. So we had this loop up here. Now we had a for next loop because we were testing. We now need to change this to a while loop, and we're going to say while lives does not equal is non-zero, we want to do our loop. Now because we're using the variable lives here, we need to preset the variable lives before our program starts, and in this particular case it makes sense to do so because we start with 5 lives. So we've got 5 lives, and while lives is not 0, do all this bit of code here. So we print the winner, and what was our last thing we had to do? We had to say if, and we've not stored in here in our main whether the computer won or not. Remember, we calculated that in the print hand function, the print winner function, but we didn't actually return it out of there. So we could re-alter our code, but we've actually got the function to do that, so we might as well just recall the computer wins function. Probably the easiest way to do it. Not super efficient, but it certainly will make the code quite easy to maintain and quite clear what it does. So I just want to get that function there and say if the computer wins when we've got player's hand. So I've got a test and if condition. What do I need to do now? Lives minus 1. Okay, the one thing we didn't do within this code is actually, or in the original design, is actually print the lives out anywhere. So I've not put that in the code. I should really go back and look at the code design to see where it makes sense to do it. I'm going to just do it at the top here. I'm going to say print you have lives as a variable name, lives left. So that should keep track of what we've done. Obviously it won't actually print 0 because it won't go within the loop here, so maybe that's not the best place to put it when I think about it. See, this is typical now. I'm hacking the code rather than thinking about my code design. Very bad practice. I'm actually going to put it at the bottom here. So after we've decremented it, I'm going to say how many lives you've got left. Notice it's not only if we decrement, no matter what happens here, because it's not part of the if statement, we'll always print how many lives we've got. So let's run our code, see if we're there. So, final game. What do I want to go? I'm going to go for rock. So now one thing that I don't like straight away is it's giving me my answer and immediately it's asking me the next question. I'm finding that a bit difficult to do. So again, not part of our code design, but I'm just going to hack this bit of code in. So Control C to get out of here. Really, after I've printed how many lives left, I just want it to pause. So I'm just going to say input press any key to continue. So you'll notice what that's doing. It's doing the input function. It's prompting me to press any key. I don't actually care what is pressed, because when it returns, whatever input returns, I'm not actually assigning anywhere. So it means it will just wait at this point and not clutter up the screen with the next question. That should just make it run a little bit tidier. Okay, so enter rock, paper, scissors. So I'm going to go for 1. I'm going to go for rock. Right, so the computer chose rock, I chose rock. It's a draw, and I've still got 5 lives left. Press any key to continue. I'm going to stick with rock. I chose rock, and it chose paper. So it won and it decremented a life. Press key to continue. I'm going to stick with rock. They chose paper and I chose rock, so gosh, they won again. Let's change my thing and go for scissors. Computer chose paper and I chose scissors, so I won. So yeah, still got 3 lives. Go for rock. And it chose rock, it's a draw. Gosh, it's getting rather tedious now, isn't it? Paper. Oh, computer won, I'm down to 2 lives, fantastic. Stick with that. Computer chose scissors, I chose paper. So computer won, I'm down to 1 life. And I'm going to go for rock this time. And it chose paper, so it wrapped my rock. And I have no lives left. Press any key to continue. And our code ends. Fantastic. So there's the coding for our rock, paper, scissors game, and it's introduced the idea of using the while loop when we don't know how many times we're going to go around here in quite a simple game. The next stage of this has a look at the input function to see how it actually works and see if we could improve it. So thanks for watching.